Hey there, thanks for checking this out. My name is Ramon Newman. I am founder, CEO of New Mavericks, and I appreciate your time and focus and attention in checking out these two major things that cause our focus to be hijacked and a delay in our achievement and progress as leaders. So clearly, focus and attention is very, very important because we all have the same amount of time, and it's what we do with our focus and attention that determines whether what we want to see happen actually happens. So I'm going to talk about these two major things that cause a corruption or a diminishment of your ability to achieve and progress as a leader and protect your achievement and progress. So first major reason is vices. Now vices can be many. They can be in the hundreds. There's hundreds of different types of vices. And I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'll spare you that. I'm going to talk about the 6 major vices that are basically the root cause of all the other vices and what to do about them. Now, the thing to know about vices is that they're things that grip our senses. They pull us away from ourselves, and they're like distractions, and they're basically centered around short-term gratification rather than long-term focus and fulfillment. So the first major vice is greed. Now, that not only includes greed of money, but also can obviously be food, can be attention, many different types of greed. It's anything that you can consume more of or take more of or think you deserve more of in life, right? And that greed comes obviously from a lack, that you think you need things outside of yourself or more things outside of yourself in order to fulfill yourself. So overcoming greed is really flipping the switch in terms of being focused on receiving to being focused on giving. What can you give to any situation or circumstance that you're in? And that is going to help nullify that feeling of greed. So the next major vice is anger. Now we all get a little bit or a lot angry at some time. It could be with ourselves, could be with others, it could be with technology. And obviously it's not a great experience. Sometimes it's useful to help break some inertia, but in general, we don't really want to get gripped by anger so much because it obviously does corrupts our physiology and our psychology. Causes really negative chemicals to be produced in the body, and it throws off our prefrontal cortex, right? We're not really then in a great state to make great decisions. So to counter anger, we have to really get back to really diminishing that fire element. Anger is a fire element. There can sometimes be there's too much heat in ourselves, in our mind, and in our body. So we need to be able to pacify ourselves and have a more cooling effect, a cooling mind. Do things that cool you down. Walking next to water, walking under the moonlight at night, and just being more connected and more settled is generally a way to pacify that feeling of anger and being able to purify it, right? So the next major vice, the third one, is jealousy. And jealousy is something where we feel like someone else has something that we wish we had, and there's some envy there. So overcoming jealousy is something that we have to, again, flip the switch and actually be inspired by what we see. Right? And work out how that we can work on ourselves in order to create that experience for ourselves. Because generally what we're jealous about in some way, shape, or form is what we want. So to get what we want, we have to focus back on ourselves and work out how we can develop in a way that we can also attract that into our life. So the fourth major vice is lust. Now, when I talk about lust, lust can obviously be it can be physical, it can be mental, it could be emotional, and it's a craving in some way for pleasure and enjoyment, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that if you become so all consumed by it, right? It can kind of, again, you want that short-term gratification gratification versus that long-term fulfillment. So overcoming lust is really about finding more focus on what makes you happy and connecting to that bliss that's always there, always has been there, always will be there. And it's through that experience of bliss that you're less within yourself, that you're less gripped by wanting to that pleasure or that lust through the senses, right? Because the pleasure through the senses, it comes and goes. It's very fleeting, you know. It could be lust of sweetness, you know. Too much sweet can cause problems with your assimilation of sugars and your insulin and your pancreas. So it's being able to create things that create that balance, right? So that you actually feel your own bliss and don't have to kind of feel like it's something you have to get through your senses. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is vanity. And we all like to look good, and we all should look good, but sometimes we get too preoccupied with it. It's like an objective thing. We put so much attention on the objective value that we lose the process and we lose the subjective value of things. And so one way to flip the switch on that one is to focus on, you know, how can you make others look good? How can you uplift the environment around you rather than just trying to uplift and make yourself look good? You know, I'm talking not just in terms of looks, but I'm talking in terms of, you know, trying to up one or show someone up, things like that. So being able to not be so gripped by vanity, you know, take care of yourself, look good, but then also look to how you can improve things in your environment so the environment looks good, and then that reflects back to you well and you look good. So again, it's focusing on that long-term value rather than that short-term value. So the sixth and final vice, or type of vice, groups of vices, is false attachments. Now, these can be to things, to people, can be stimulants, can be substances that we think we need, but in actual fact we don't. It's just some weakness in the mind that we think that we have to be attached to that person or that thing or that substance or that stimulant in order to have the experience that we want. And when in actual fact, if you look deeper, there's better ways to create that experience that is actually more healthy for you and is more sustaining for you. Sometimes when we have false attachments, we're attached to things that, again, they give us a short-term hit, but then they cause a long-term deficit, right? And so then we have to purify that. So it's being able to purify those false attachments and instigate behaviors and habits that really help you to be more centered and more fulfilled in a natural long-term way rather than that quick fix. Okay, so those are the 6 major vices that can really hijack your focus and attention. So they're greed, anger, lust, jealousy, vanity, and false attachments. So that's the first thing, vices. That's a huge influence on your focus. The next one is the second major influence that can hijack your vices is a lack of belief in your purpose and in yourself, right? When we don't fully or deeply or strongly believe in who we are and what we're good at and the value that we bring to the table and our purpose, then anything can come up to distract us from that purpose, right? Because we don't really strongly, coherently believe enough in it. So in order to overcome this, you have to really go deeper in yourself. You have to really own what you believe in, you know, and make sure it is something that you do truly believe in. And so then you can actually live that purpose that you want. And then you're not so corrupted by external things that can really hijack your focus. So those are the 2 things. Now, the underlying thing here that really determines that you're not wavered so much by vices or a lack of belief, or that strengthens your belief, is really what we call global alpha coherence. This is coherence between your right creative side of your brain and the left logical executing side of your brain. between your higher brain, which is about expanding and giving to the world, and your lower brain, which is about your own survival and self-interest, between your own mind and your own heart, coherence there, that they agree with each other, and also that coherence between this prefrontal cortex, which makes all those very important strategic decisions and executing of them, and your amygdala, which is really about, protecting you. But in order for the amygdala not to go into fight or flight response, it has to have a coherence and integration with the prefrontal cortex. So it actually raises its value in terms of vigilance, meaning it's able to actually preempt things from or issues causing major problems, right? So what they've found is that a lot of great people, world-class business leaders, musicians, and athletes, they have a lot of global alpha coherence within themselves, with their environment, people in their environment, and that is really what enables them to not be, or their focus not be hijacked or corrupted or less. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying that they're less likely because they have such strong coherence about themselves, about their bigger picture, about their bigger long-term picture, as well as their short-term focuses to get there. So this is very important. And the other reason why this is so important is because time management is actually based on energy management, and energy management is based on thought management, and thought management is actually based on how much global alpha coherence you have. The more global alpha coherence, the more the right thoughts at the right time that you have to better use your energy in the time that you have. So I hope this is real useful to you. I'd love to get your insights and comments and any questions below. And hopefully through this, you can really have that indomitable, unshakable, invincible focus that allows you to really enhance and protect your achievement and progress as a leader.